Hello, NephU community, and welcome to the Hot Topics in Nephrology podcast. My name is Andrea Mohindra. I am a clinical and scientific liaison with Otsuka, and I will be serving as your host for today's podcast. I'm very excited to be here today with Dr. Shivam Joshi to share his expertise in different dietary patterns in chronic kidney disease. We'll be focusing specifically on a paper that Dr. Joshi and colleagues published just a few months ago, March 2023, in the American Journal of Kidney Diseases, titled Risks and Benefits of Different Dietary Patterns in CKD.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I love talking about diet and kidney disease. So this will be a fun discussion.
I agree. So let's start out by talking about the predominant diet in the US, the Western diet. So our modern Western diet that's filled with animal-based proteins, processed foods, lots of sugar. Could you recap for the audience the impact of this diet in chronic kidney disease patients?
Yeah, so this diet has a lot of things that we would not normally eat. It is high in animal protein, it is high in sugar, it is high in processed carbohydrates, it is high in processed food. So as you can imagine, eating these foods is not good for health. And if you have kidney problems, it's also not good for the kidney. So we can take it one by one. So for example, animal protein, we eat a lot of animal protein. 69% of the protein we eat in our diet comes from animal protein. About 42% is from meat, with another 20% coming from dairy. This comes out to a whopping 274 pounds of meat and 667 pounds of dairy per year per person. And that is an enormous amount of animal protein. And all this animal protein is problematic for the kidneys because it can worsen some of the complications of kidney disease, like metabolic acidosis, hyperphosphatemia. It can affect the microbiome, which in turn has effects on kidney function. And it can contribute to the accumulation of uremic toxins. And these toxins that come from animal protein can lead to oxidative stress, inflammation, loss of kidney function. And not to mention, all that animal protein also increases the risk of developing kidney disease like diabetes, obesity, and high blood pressure. So there's a lot of potential damage from the kidney to the kidney from animal protein. Changing gears, we also eat a lot of sugary substances. We eat a lot of sugar. We eat about 60 pounds of sugar each year, and all the sugar and the processed carbohydrates that come with it, like white flour, are big contributors to diabetes, obesity, and hypertension. If you, most of us don't eat sugar alone. It's often paired with some processed carbohydrates, some refined carbohydrates, like a cookie or cake or a muffin. So all that is without fiber, it's without nutrients, and that's problematic. And there was this meta-analysis almost a decade ago that showed that when looking at sugar-sweetened soda, that there was an association with chronic kidney disease, but not with artificially sweetened soda. But we know that for sugar and refined carbohydrates, that these things are problematic for diabetes and obesity and high blood pressure. Artificial sweeteners are controversial. Many people say that they're okay. A lot of studies have not found associations, but in one meta-analysis, there was an association between artificially sweetened beverages and obesity. And obesity is a direct and indirect risk factor for kidney disease. So for soda, it's probably best to stay away from them regardless of how it's sweetened, whether it's with sugar or artificially. And probably best to just drink water. The last thing I'll touch on is ultra processed foods. Ultra processed foods are really common in the diet now and are being studied extensively for their risk for health problems, obesity, diabetes. And what it means is that what ultra processed foods mean, or what they mean, is that they are foods that would not be found in the natural environment. These are foods that, for example, a caveman would not recognize as food. So, for example, a corn is recognizable as a whole food, healthy, but the problem is that we often consume corn in a processed form. Corn on the cob is unprocessed, but corn flour is processed. And then corn chips would be ultra processed. There's a variety of examples that people give, but that's just one example. So it's something that you would not immediately identify, or would be able to identify as to how it was made, or if someone didn't explain it to you. These foods are really cheap. They're highly addictive. They generate great profits for companies, but unfortunately they're bad for human health. And these are all the foods that you would find in a gas station, for example, but are not healthy foods. So that's the problem, and we're just eating too much of it. And there's 2 studies that have shown that these foods are associated with an increased risk of chronic kidney disease. And the reason for that probably is related to that we're not eating the foods that we should be eating, and that these foods are devoid of fiber and nutrients. So they're just delivering calories in hyperpalatable quantities that leads to obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure. So all of these things are problematic, and we touched on these things in our article, and I gave people some options on how to be healthier.